And thanks everyone hello everyone, and thanks for joining today. It's the first meeting of this SIG. It's something that I wanted to set up to really kind of bring together a space for those from the third sector to talk about their experiences working with health and social care. I'll go into a bit more detail about kind of my background and the idea for the SIG in a bit, but I just thought, just starting off, it'd be really nice to hear everyone. I've met some of you on SIG meetings before, but it'd be great to just hear a bit from everyone. And I just thought we could do a round of introductions and maybe just hear kind of your name, organisation, and maybe something fun that you've got planned for the next month or kind of sometime in the future as well. Just a fun introduction. So if I start, and then I'll kind of just go round clockwise, who I can see on the screen. So my name's Pete. I founded the Wheelchair Skills College, which is a social enterprise, and something fun that I've got planned next week. Actually, I've got the BBC coming, doing a kind of a bit of a story on some of the work that I'm doing in schools, which is pretty exciting, and kind of get a bit of exposure like that. Next person go around. Angela, would you give an introduction, please?
Hi, I'm Angela White. I've got an organisation called Going for Old, community interest company, which is established a few years ago, but actually because of lockdown, nothing happened. So I'm just starting to try and get that going again. I'm also known as the Running Granny, because I started running in my early 50s and I found I can run long distances. The whole point of Going for Old is to, or was founded basically on the running, in that I promote action for healthy aging. I'm a retired orthopaedic and trauma surgeon with a special interest in older people's health. I've also worked in various voluntary roles around older people as well. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm developing workshops, health workshops, specifically around bone health. What's a fun fact of something that I'm doing? I'm not really sure. A friend of mine has cajoled me into running a duathlon a week on Sunday, so at Alton Park. So we'll see how that goes.
Brilliant. Well, good luck at that. That's duathlons, running and biking.
Run, bike, run. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but my first main challenge for this year is I plan to run 192 miles continuously coast to coast in May. So that's a big challenge, and my claim to fame is that I set the Guinness World Record as the oldest female to run the length of the country from John O'Groats to Land's End when I was 60. I walk my talk basically when I'm promoting action for healthy aging.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for sharing.
Okay.
If we move around, Sue, would you like to give an introduction?
So I'm Sue. I'm from the Arthritis and Musculoskeletal Alliance, ARMA, which is a charity that brings together the patient organisations and the professional bodies working in musculoskeletal health to work for better MSK health. So we don't deal directly with things related to patients, but a lot of our members do. So we've got a lot of patient member organisations that do lots of really good stuff and struggle to get their voices heard in the NHS, which is why I thought this looked like a good event to come to. So that's who I am, following on nicely from Angela's. I also started running in my 50s, but I do not do those sorts of distances. I do park run. Park run is my distance. That's about it. But yeah, the kind of being more active for healthy aging is very, very much hits some of the key messages that we promote. What's something I'm doing? Oh, fun thing I'm doing in just over a week's time, which is slightly surprising me, is that I'm going to an evening of Indian dance, which is something I really enjoy. But I moved up to Northumberland from London just over a year ago, and I was not expecting to find this sort of thing literally on my doorstep in village halls, closer to home than it would have been if I'd had to get on the tube and go to it in London. So I'm absolutely delighted to be doing that in a village hall in the next door village from where I live.
Excellent. Sounds fun. Thanks for sharing. Sophia, would you like to go next?
Sorry, I was trying to find my unmute. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia Modi. I'm from a mental health organisation over in Hertfordshire. I'm not a member of your SIG, so I've just come as a curious listener with all the emails that Jerome and Matthew keep sending us off. Sign up, something exciting happening. I thought, right, okay, I had a slot free in my calendar, so I'm going to just turn up. It's something that I don't get involved so much, even though I'm head of QI. There are other teams who get involved with our third sector. So it's something that I want to get involved in. So I am here just as a curious listener and being inspired by all the running. Oh, I wish I could do all of that. Something that I'm doing exciting. This is my birthday month, and my birthday month I always celebrate in full swing. So I'm doing a lot of social activities over the next 2 weeks. On Friday, I'm going to see Dirty Dancing and going to see have a lovely meal. And then I'm also going to go and see Magnolia Steel, which is a women's power movie. So yeah, lots of fun stuff in my personal life. Work always happens, so I like to do my personal life first.
Well, happy birthday for that. If you go, Mandy, would you like to give an introduction next?
Mandy, if you're there, you.
Mandy might be away from the computer. Jill, would you like to go next?
Hello, I'm Jill, and I'm trying to do too much this morning. I can't stay away from the sessions like this, but I haven't really quite got time. So I haven't actually got a clue what's going on. I think, are we just introducing ourselves? So, hi, I'm Jill. I'm the creator of a board game called Whose Shoes. So the reason I was attracted to this session is that Whose Shoes tries to look, basically it doesn't see sectors. So social care, NHS, community, for me, it's all about people and things fitting around people rather than the other way around. So I kind of get involved in co-production work and try and bring in all the different voices. And so I think it was something about what are we doing exciting at the moment. So I've just been talking to Kate Pound from NHS England. Now I've known Kate for probably about 8 or 9 years, but do I really know her? Not really, just, you know, from working and finding out bits. And I was on a session the other day when she was suddenly talking about growing up in a hostel for fishermen and how that sort of shaped her whole life and taking healthcare to people. So they had healthcare on the harbour, and she was suddenly coming out with all these amazing stories. So I invited her to be a guest on my podcast, and I've just come from talking to Kate and hearing more about it. And the more you meet individuals, the more you find out that you know nothing about them really, and the stories that sit behind things are just so interesting to me. So, but you know, I think relevant to this session that would bring taking health services to fishermen and to their families, setting up dentistry on the harbour side, this charity that she is a trustee for, just so interesting. So a little babble version of why I'm here, if that makes any sense at all. But nice to meet you, everybody.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, it's definitely something I've tried to do with that kind of taking it to people rather than expecting them to come to you. It's one more barrier removed. Thanks. Hilda, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks. And sorry, my camera's not there. The next time I will be on camera. So my name is Hilda Campbell. I'm head cook and bottle washer for a charity called Coke Scotland. And our mission, if you like, is to work with others to try and find ways where people suffer less, led by people's experience of what does and doesn't work for them. So the analogy we often use is, if you were going to design the perfect reading chair, this is the ultimate chair for reading a book, then it would make sense to go and talk to people who are avid readers, to actually say, you know, what would make a really good chair to read a book in? What would the lighting be? What would this, what would that, what would be the next thing? And then listening to that, then go ahead and begin to build the chair, involving people who are going to use the chair as well as designing it. And I think that the same goes for all services. All too often, the people who are actually going to use the service aren't asked, what would work for you? So our whole organisation for 32 years asked people, what would work for you? And we were never about growing an empire, but an idea. So for us, success is we're not needed anymore. And what we want to try and do is share what we have learned. And that's why we like the Q space, because you get to meet people within the Q community that you just would not get to meet in other places, including across third sector and statutory services. And I've built up so many positive relationships with colleagues in health since I joined Q, that it's a really good space to be in. Something I'm looking forward to. I'm feeling really guilty with all this running. It's like I really should get my finger out and be more active. But I enjoy shopping. So what I'll maybe do is move quicker between one shop and another. And that's a step to becoming more active. It's a step in the right direction, because it's gardening times coming up soon, and we were supposed to have snow, so I didn't go to the garden centre, but maybe this weekend I'll go to the garden centre and get inspired to do some stuff in the garden. Thanks very much, and thanks for creating this space, Pete. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate everyone coming along to it as well. I think maybe a kind of a supermarket sweep idea, and kind of getting more active with the shopping there, Hilda. I see that I think Mandy's having some trouble with microphone and camera, and she's just put in the chat that she works for QLab Cymru team in this community centre, and going to Norway on Friday and hopefully seeing Northern Lights while in a hot tub. It's a nice way to spend the weekend. Brilliant. So if we just continue going around, Alex, would you do the introduction next, please?
Hi, I am a cheeky Q team member. Matthew mentioned this is one of our stand-ups this week, and it sounded really interesting. I used to work in the charity sector. I still do work in the charity sector, but pre-Health Foundation, I was working for the British Heart Foundation and Diabetes UK. And before that, I worked in local government, but coming from a sports background, like sport in healthcare type space. So I thought I'm quite interested to hear what's going on in this space and see if I can contribute. In terms of interesting things work-wise, I'm actually joining a group to look at mission-aligned investment of the Health Foundation's endowment. So I'm really interested to see what will be developed in that space. And other than that, I've just restarted at Park Run. I take too much else that's interesting because I've got 10-month-old twins and spend all my time wiping their noses and making baby food. So not a lot of other fun stuff going on.
Brilliant, thanks, Alex. There's definitely a running theme emerging today. Wasn't expecting that. Claire, would you like to go next?
Hi, my name's Claire Fountain and I work at HQIP. So that's anybody who's not familiar with it, it's a not-for-profit, and so we deliver a lot of the national clinical audits, but we also do a lot of evaluation work, and particularly things that look at inequalities and understanding them, and then the quality improvement work around that. So I have no idea what this call was about. I just saw the title and thought, oh, that sounds like it would be a nice, fun thing to listen to. So I'm just curious about what you're going to talk about, and I have no interest or expectation of doing running. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to spring and having better weather. But yeah, wonderful.
Brilliant, thanks, Claire. It's nice to get some balance with it, running and non-running. And Sonal, would you like to go?
Hi everyone, my name's Sonal Mehta. I am a pharmacist by background, but a couple of years ago I started my own community interest company. But based on the kind of the varying kind of skills and experiences that I've had, I've done a lot of work around like inequalities, community development, that side of things. And I just felt there wasn't really an avenue through the pharmacy profession to really kind of develop that any further, and some broader stuff around just being fed up with the pace of change in the NHS. So I thought I'm just going to try and see what I can do for myself. So I went part-time in my pharmacy role, did a little bit of work with some primary care networks, and then about 6 months after I started my company, the system that I was working in, I was part of a VCSE steering group for the system, and a job opportunity came up to be the partnership lead between the sector and the system. And I just thought, actually, this is really, really exciting. And while it involved a pay cut, the fact that I'd started my own business kind of allowed me to mitigate for that. So I'm now in this slightly interesting position where I'm director of my own community interest company, but I'm now still working as this VCSE partnership lead in the Bedfordshire, Luton and Milton Keynes integrated care system. So I've kind of got a bit of a foot in both camps at the minute. And I'm not into running.
Brilliant, thanks. That's going to be kind of really unique insight from being able to see it from both sides as well as we start conversations. Okay, brilliant. Well, thanks everyone for those introductions. It was great to hear where you're working, and also a bit about yourself as well. So if I just start off with the idea for this SIG, I've been part of Q since last March and tried to get involved in a lot of different things, the events, the visits, and other SIGs as well. And I think for me, there's just something missing around that kind of peer support element of other people working in the third sector, and working with health and social care has just been something that hasn't really worked for me in terms of since I set up my own social enterprise. So I was really hoping just to create this space as something that will be useful for everyone. I want to have it as something where we can share ideas in a constructive way. It's very much kind of going along with the idea of liberating structures, and it's not going to be a fixed way of working. I want to kind of hear what everyone's got to say, kind of what's going to be of value to people. I know everyone's kind of got a lot of work on, so we want to create meetings that are going to be easy to get to, the right time, the right frequency as well, but ultimately being able to create that value as well. So as we kind of move on through conversations today, I'm really hoping that we can all start sharing ideas around what's kind of worked for us with the NHS and what's not, and then working with Q as well, and also what we'd like to get from this group as well, and what really holds value and what can we learn from each other. So just a bit about myself. I've been a wheelchair user for the last 16 years, and I was really lucky early on to learn wheelchair skills, which is kind of the way that you move around in your wheelchair, going from really basic stuff for like pushing yourself and turning, all the way up to kind of going up and down curbs and steps and escalators and all the other things in between. Actually, it's just about how you live the life you want to, but using a wheelchair instead of walking. And I put massive importance on wheelchair skills. I do see it enabling me over the years to go and do traveling and start a career, and then go on to do all the sports and have all the social activities as well, and just have that confidence to go out there. But it's not taught as a mainstream part of healthcare, which has always been baffling to me. So back in 2019, I had this idea to, okay, I'm going to explore how I can take it out to everyone. There's a massive, massive population of wheelchair users out there, and there's a massive unmet need as well. So I started thinking about that in 2019. I was successful with some funding, but I got the funding in March 2020. So I got the funding through right as the pandemic hit and everything closed down. I then started this up alongside my day job in 2021. And I was working with NHS wheelchair services, testing out a few ideas. Really positive results from those sessions, but it quickly became apparent as well that, first of all, the NHS wheelchair services weren't going to be the place to do this on its own, at least, because they don't have the resources, the culture, the communication that's needed to drive forwards a new idea like this. and also that I wasn't going to be able to do it alongside my day job. So I've left my day job and I've been doing this full time since January last year. And at the start, when I realized that it wasn't going to work with wheelchair services, I started scoping out a lot of ways to roll wheelchair skills out. So it was all about removing barriers, as we heard before. It's taking it to the people. So my question started off, how can I reach wheelchair users? So wheelchair services were always going to be part of that. It makes sense. I don't want to cut any options out of this. So wheelchair services remain on that, working with other charities, local DDPOs, community groups, primary care, hospitals, schools and colleges. So really think about all of these places where wheelchair users are already going and how I can link in with them. Now, as well as wheelchair services, I did look at kind of primary care networks, trying to reach out to GPs. But again, that was all kind of didn't really move very far. And that's one of the difficulties I've had working with the NHS. And that's one of the reasons that I joined Q as well. So I wanted to join Q to link up with other people that worked within the sector and try and figure out these answers to, okay, how are we going to work together? How do we make that change happen? And I guess that's led me to setting up this group as well, because while there's a massive group of people from across the UK in Q, I did feel like it was kind of passing other people working in the third sector and maybe not getting that opportunity to share ideas as well. So in setting up this group, it's really about how other people have worked within the health sector, how other people have kind of seen it successfully work. And I don't necessarily just mean kind of with the funding side of things. It'd be great if that was a possibility, but it's more about how do we influence change within the health and care sector to be able to promote what are amazing activities that can really make a massive difference. And I know that there's not going to be a big return on investment but for monetary value, which I think that's why I've not been able to drive forward my idea as an innovation through some of the AHSN networks. But what I do have is something that offers a lot of social value, and it's got a high social return on investment as well. And I think but being able to demonstrate that to trusts and foundations within the health service, I've not really figured out how to do that yet. So yeah, that's kind of my journey and kind of where I've got up to with this. And I thought that, yeah, it was going to be really just kind of a lot of open conversations there, just sharing a couple of ideas, and then hopefully we can kind of start a conversation where we can figure out, okay, maybe this is what we want to get from the group, and we can start sharing those ideas. So I thought that for as a way to move forward, I wasn't sure how many people were going to turn up, but it seems like we've got enough for a couple of breakout rooms. So I think that if we maybe go into a couple of breakout rooms, and then we can start sharing our experiences in the breakout room, and then come back and feedback to the full group as well. So I've just got a couple of things I'll post in the post them in the chat for what we could talk about. So it's all about people's experiences. I think good experiences of working with the NHS and not so good experiences with the NHS, maybe what we found worked with both of those, and also experience of working with Q as well, and the same again, kind of what's worked, what's not worked. I know for me personally, I think there's just so much great stuff happening in Q, but also it feels like slightly weighted towards a kind of more of a clinical perspective, and which is why I've kind of started looking at this this third sector as well. And if we were going to make Q work better for us, what would that look like as well? And it's something that I hope we can do in this group as well when we're sharing ideas. I think as well as our own learning, hopefully we can pass ideas back onto Q as well to kind of improve things for ourselves, and hopefully get more of a voice up there as well. So yeah, that's kind of the idea for the breakout rooms. Before we try and go into the breakout rooms, is there any questions for anyone? Okay, no questions. It's always worrying when there's no questions. I'm wondering if my mic's on. Okay, great. Okay, Jorian, I think you said breaking up into groups of 3.
Yeah, I'm starting 3 breakout rooms, groups of 3, except one room that will have 2, but maybe one of us will join them. For how long, Pete? Just so we all have an idea.
Could we say like 15 minutes maybe?
Sure. So folks, as always, I'll be sending you time reminders just so you have an idea of how much time there's still left. And you will be invited to your break room right away. I'll see you in 15.
Okay, thanks. So that was a really interesting conversation, and just getting a feeling that we've opened a real can of worms with which is brilliant, because that's what it was supposed to be. It's been sharing experiences and sharing what worked. I think we've got just a little over 10 minutes. So if we can kind of feedback what we talked about in our groups, and then we can just wrap up with maybe kind of one thing that people would look to get out of future meetings. Just to say that I think this is very much the start of a conversation, and I will send a kind of a Google form around afterwards, just for everyone, when everyone gets off the call, just to kind of reflect on what was useful, what wasn't, and how it might look in the future. But if we got any volunteers to feedback what they were talking on their groups. I can start with mine then. So I was in a group with Angela and Hilda, and there's a lot of talk around kind of preventative versus the kind of the immediate issues as well, and how it's often responsive healthcare versus what we're doing in the third sector is about that long-term impact, and those things that can be make massive difference to people's lives in the long term, but it's just not seen as a priority, which makes things incredibly difficult. And that goes from working with kind of operational people all the way up to Whitehall as well. We're just not seeing anything there. And also talk about how Q can support that as well. So I thought that was really interesting points around how that looks for us within the Q community. Yeah, NHS being always focused on money rather than that social return on investments. I think that'd be really interesting to kind of speak more about that and how we can work to promote that. Maybe it's about working with kind of leaders and people who are doing really good jobs within certain locations, and then kind of sharing that learning as well. And NHS not really understanding how to work with small organizations, and how can we bring people together to start sharing ideas around and promoting good ways of working on that. There's a lot that I faced, and it came up in conversation around that lived versus learned experience, and how there's just that difference in power, and how maybe it's not truly co-produced because health professionals are not holding that same kind of role as people from the third sector within conversations. So even when people are sat around the table, if the funding is on one side, then it will become weighted, and it's not a kind of open conversation around moving things forward and truly co-produced. We're talking about how NHS and big local organisations are risk averse. They often kind of buy services from people who reflect themselves, which are these larger organisations that can be disconnected from what it is like on the ground. And then just talking about kind of our role within Q and being fully integrated, and not kind of just bringing in the third sector, which I think Jorian, I mentioned to you when you told me about the Q improvement journey blog, and a lot of the forms that I fill in joining Q, even it feels like it was focused on health background rather than that kind of third sector background. Yeah, and then we're talking about aligning agendas and making sure that when partnering with organisations and bigger organisations that we are aiming for this same thing, and also that there's going to be some crossover with the special interest group for network and weaving as well, and we'll be taking learning from that hopefully and bringing it into this conversation. I think I covered everything though. Angela and Hilda, was there anything that I missed out that you'd like to add?
No, I think that's pretty comprehensive. The only other thing I would add to that, and sorry if I've missed that because I was cutting and pasting an email address, is that there's opportunities using skills that we have within Q, like social network mapping, to help third sector organisations who maybe want to connect on a specific issue with other Q members. So there's an exercise there, and a bit like in the Hexatime space, where you can connect with people who've got a common interest to you, is look at what's this person want to achieve here, what Q members are there over there in statutory services, how do we build that link? Because sometimes having a conversation with somebody in Q can open doors out with the Q space, because I think we agreed people who are Q members are up for change. You know, that's why they're Q members. So it's how do we build those bridges that they may help open doors. Very brief story, cutting short. I tried for a long time to put together an antibiotic resistance tip sheet. Got nowhere. When I did the network weaving learning series, I connected with a colleague who's looking at antibiotic resistance in England. And they were like, oh, I know who to connect you with in Scotland. So it was like, great. And as a result of that, we worked with them and the community, and we put together this antibiotic tip sheet. Would never have happened because I was banging against walls trying to make the connection. But through Elizabeth in the Q community, she helped open a door for me that then helped me do work in the day job. So it's about how we build more of those connections. Thanks.
Brilliant, thanks, Hilda.
And I just remembered the point that I wanted to make, which is that when it wants to, the government can, in fact, throw money at the third sector, which it did during COVID and does during winter pressures. It gives open-ended checks, so it doesn't expect that accountability to come back. It gives open-ended checks to organisations such as Age UK, Age Concerns, to actually support, you know, facilitated discharge to get people home with packages, you know, from hospital. So it can do it when it wants to, but it does it on its terms, and it doesn't necessarily, this is not meant to be a disparaging comment, but it doesn't require any accountability from the organisations other than that they get involved and do what's needed to be done. So, and I think, you know, there are other projects as well around the country in small areas where these sorts of things happen. But yeah, it can do it when it wants to. It's just that there isn't a protocol or a framework for being able to do it.
That's helpful to know, and something definitely worth looking into as well. Okay, great. Have we got any volunteers from the other two groups just to give us a kind of summary of what you talked about as well?
Sophia, did you want to do our group? Or do you want me to do it? Or Sue?
You can go for it, Claire.
Okay,
I
great.
nominate you.
Thanks very much.
Nice
Well, you notice how I was trying to pass it off onto you, but never mind. Okay, so we had a discussion, and the kind of things we noted down were when it works really well in terms of that NHS voluntary sector collaboration when priorities align. So when the stars align, it's all lovely. Everyone's motivated, can often work well, but it's also needing to have that kind of mutual understanding of each other, and perhaps Sue can say this better, but that understanding of what it is that the NHS offers, what it is that the voluntary sector can bring, and that mutual valuing and respect, which needs to go beyond rhetoric of, yes, we really value co-design, to actually really understanding the absolute power of a lot of the voluntary organisations that are out there and the great value that they can really add. the same kind of negative thing came up in terms of, you know, when it suits the NHS, often that kind of collaboration will be done. But from my point of view, I was also thinking in terms of, even when there is that will, often certainly on the NHS side, there's that operational focus of, wouldn't it be great to do that, but actually we've got to focus on the here and now. And often what could be helpful is that kind of dating service in terms of bringing together, this is the problem and the organisation that want this problem fixed, and actually this is how the voluntary sector could support and help to solve that problem. And that's the sort of space that we're hoping that we might be able to help with and add some value. I've also posted in the chat, there is that sense of knowing the voluntary sector, what's out there, what's going on, how do we connect with them, would be lovely to have it in a central place. And actually there is a big bid out there at the moment which is SBS, so it's Shared Business Services. No idea who's going to do that, but it may be something maybe that the Q might be able to link in with longer term, don't know. We know certainly a couple of organisations that were thinking about bidding for it, we're not. But yeah, it might be something at a higher level the Q could link in with to see how kind of good practice and things could be shared and networking. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, Claire. Yeah, thanks for posting that link as well. Definitely look into that. And then the final group, got volunteer to share what your thoughts were.
Go on, Jill, you go.
There you go.
Because I was going to say I've been holding back because I've got a foot in both camps. I really wanted, you know, I think it's important that people with very specific VCSE experience provide that experience today. I do have something to say, but you go first, Jill.
Well, I think it was true from our group that there wasn't, probably apart from, I mean, there was Alex and Sonal, I think, haven't had a massively fantastic experience of engaging with the NHS. I've had a very mixed experience. I mean, I find, so I'm the creator of a co-production tool called Whose Shoes, and I find that the NHS love it until they hate it, because it kind of finds out the real issues, and it's something, it's a bit like unleashing a can of worms potentially. If you actually genuinely want to find out what people think, and some NHS organisations really do, some organisations generally really do, some want to get things that confirm what they think people think or what they want people to think, and then it's all a little bit tricky and dangerous. So I've found kind of like maverick ways really of like walking this line between these various sectors and trying to bring the real people into the room and letting the power of that speak for itself. So for example, through my podcast, I talk to people with all sorts of different experiences, but I do find that the NHS, I'm probably talking NHS England, say how much they want lived experience stories, but when they're there ready to share and, you know, use the ones that we've got, and I find it very painful sometimes for people to tell stories, so I want to get as much value from them as possible. So if somebody's bothered to record something, you know, if someone in a position of power actually shares it in a network, why don't they? And generally they really don't. So then I challenge them with that, and then they perhaps like me a bit less. I don't know. We'll see.
Thanks for sharing, Jill. I think there's just been so many interesting things being talked about today. I think there's going to be some really valuable conversations and moving forwards. I think it is about having voices heard more. We've been talking about marketing, we've been talking about influencing. I think that I'd really like to talk to Q about how they can support this as well. I think that there's real potential in terms of identifying good areas of practice. Exactly as you say, Jill, that it's my experience as well that and they're just kind of everyone who's taught saying that there are some people that are more proactive, some people that do want to make that change. It's just so different working with different parts of the NHS, working with different geographical locations as well. But I think if we can find people who do good things and then use those as examples to build on, I think there's a lot of potential to make some change as well.
And I think I could say, Pete, like directly relevant to your experience and what you're talking about today. So one of the gems that I discovered on my podcast was a young NHS graduate called Daisy Mackey, who's a wheelchair user, and talking about her experience of being a member of staff in the NHS with a wheelchair. Oh my goodness, it's gold, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm not sure if I've heard Daisy's story before, but I've heard of kind of other doctors and professionals and working with the NHS getting mistaken for patients and things like that because they're using mobility aid. It's yeah, it's
and like
definitely
good facilities for staff. So there's a patient toilet, but not a staff toilet that's suitable for a disabled person. All sorts of things.
It's really interesting. It's just that culture, and like I said, when I was trying to work with wheelchair services, then there was just that culture that was already there. I think this is so I realized we've just gone over one. I want to say thanks to everyone for joining today. I think it's been such an interesting set of conversations that have been things have been hearing as well. Really want to continue these conversations as well. I think that it's got a lot of potential for us to start having a more of a voice for the third sector. We can really say, look, this is our experience, this is the value that we do bring, and then we can start saying to Q, help us kind of promote this, and how can we make some more changes with people who already want to make those changes within Q. That's brilliant. But I will send a follow-up email with a few questions, just find out what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would like to see in future meetings as well. But thanks everyone for coming, and really hope you join the group, and hopefully see you in the next one.
Thank
Nice to meet you, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers, bye.